Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the moment of truth.
And have you ruled out a pardon for your son?
Yes. I said I abide by the jury decision. I will do that, and I will not pardon him.
Is there any possibility that the president would end up pardoning his son?
No.
Well,
I just said no. I just answered.
When would the president pardon or commute his son if he's convicted?
So I've answered this question before. It was asked of me not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago, and I was very clear, and I said no.
You said before that the president would not pardon his son. Is that still the case?
Nothing has changed. That is still the case. I could speak for the president, and he said he would not pardon his son.
Does the president have any intention of pardoning him?
We've been asked that question multiple times. Our answer stands, which is no.
3 weeks later.
That didn't age very well, now did it? There's an old saying that adversity doesn't build character, it reveals it. 2 weeks ago, Mika the Bigot Brzezinski and Joe Scarborough, after several years of back and forth with Trump, and at least as many years of claiming that he's a wannabe dictator, turned on a dime, and behind their viewers' backs, slithered off to Mar-a-Lago to bend the knee to the Orange Man. Whatever happened to all of their morals? Whatever happened to all of their standards? Did they forget what he is and what he had done? Go back and watch the video that I did about this. I started by showing you how Mika was on The View just before the election, saying that this was going to be the end of American democracy, and the only sane thing to do was to oppose Trump. You can't compromise with a dictator. And then a few weeks later, she was explaining that you have to talk to dictators and find areas where you can compromise. This is what for white supremacy passes for morals and ethics. White supremacy has no morals or ethics. It has no principles. All it has is moral relativism and situational ethics. The old, I'm white and I say so. Whatever they say on Monday, they'll say something else on Tuesday, then something else entirely different on Wednesday, and then on Thursday go back to whatever is on Monday, because it's all about whatever is expedient to their power in the moment. And if that changes day by day, then so be it. White power will pretend to abide by its own rules, we'll call them laws, and its alleged principles right up until the moment that things don't go their way. Then after that, they'll abandon all of it on the spot. But you know what? Mika and Joe aren't the only ones feeling the heat. Joe Biden's under pressure too. With Trump's imminent return to the White House, and with him front-loading the FBI with hardcore ideologues, and with Republicans controlling the Senate and the House, but most importantly the Senate, the Orange Man is going to be holding all the cards come Inauguration Day. And after being made to endure all manner of investigations, prosecutions, lawsuits, and humiliation, it's understandable if the most vindictive man in politics decides to give his political enemies a taste of the same. Now, the easiest target among the Democrats would obviously not be a politician at all, but rather one of their kids, in this case, Hunter Biden. The white right have been focused on him for years because he's dumb and lazy. I guess it runs in the family. Now, in case you're new to my morning briefings, Hunter Biden was convicted in June of this year on 3 felony charges related to an application for a gun that he bought some years back. On paper, he could have been looking at many years in prison. But as the son of a president, it's inconceivable that he'd get more than a few years, that is, if he got put in prison at all. And why was he looking at prison time? Because he had already pleaded guilty to tax evasion earlier, so he wasn't a first-time offender. While he was running, or rather shuffling for president this year, Biden was repeatedly asked about whether he would pardon Hunter Biden should he be convicted. Even Karine Stank-Pierre was asked about it at the White House press briefings. And both Biden and Pierre repeatedly said no. Biden himself said that he would respect the jury's verdict, whatever it was. That's what he was saying at the time, but of course, as with everything else Biden has said, that was a lie. Hunter Biden hasn't even been sentenced yet, by the way, but that didn't stop Biden from issuing a full, complete, all-pervasive pardon for his little felon. Biden's pardon covers all offenses against the United States which he has committed or may have committed or taken part in from January 1st, 2014 through December 1st, 2024. Now keep in mind that period of time covers a lot more than just the period of tax dodging and coke-fueled gun purchases that Hunter was making. This pardon goes all the way back to Barack Obama's second term, 2014, and that's significant for one reason. Hunter Biden joined the board of the Ukrainian gas company Burisma Holdings in April of 2014, during Obama's second term when Joe Biden was his vice president. And what this pardon also does by having that time frame listed, it proves that Joe Biden was lying all these years when he claimed that he didn't know anything about his son's dirty business dealings in Ukraine. This pardon proves that not only did he know, he and Hunter have talked about it. That's how he was able to give such a specific time frame. Bigot Biden crafted a pardon that would specifically encompass the entire time that Hunter was dealing with Burisma. And if you think Biden hasn't been getting any of that Ukrainian money, you're an idiot. The last 30 days of any presidential administration are notorious for being a time when presidents hand out pardons like so much government cheese to the biggest crooks in federal prison, and Biden has proven to be no exception. Now, Biden and his sycophants have been screaming that, well, he had to do it after all. This was all a political witch hunt. It was all political, don't you know? The only reason Hunter was even being investigated was as a way to attack Biden during his presidential campaign. Well, let me tell you what actually happened. Hunter Biden had already confirmed to the feds that he was dodging taxes in December of 2020. This was shortly after Biden had been elected. As the son of a former vice president, he was given special treatment. 2 years probation is the terms of his plea deal, and they were also working out a plea deal on the gun charges that he was looking at too, which also would have included no jail time. The tax evasion plea deal went smoothly enough, but things fell apart in June of last year when it was time to finalize the gun charges plea deal. The judge on the case, who was a Trump nominee, was very skeptical of the deal, feeling that it was highly unusual, and she was very reticent about signing off on it. As a result, Merrick Garland felt compelled to name a Trump-nominated U.S. attorney as special counsel, and Hunter Biden was indicted on 3 felony charges. First, for lying to a federally licensed gun dealer by claiming on the application form that he wasn't a drug user. The second charge was for the actual submission of the fraudulent application to the gun dealer, and the third was for Hunter Biden possessing the gun for 11 days despite knowing he was a drug addict. Hunter Biden's not the only junkie in the Biden family. I've done video essays about the other drug addicts in their family, but Hunter Biden's drug addiction is particularly well known, especially since he's made headlines about it, had scandals and scrapes with the law as a result of it. In 2014, Hunter Biden was kicked out of the Navy after he tested positive for cocaine. This while his father was vice president. In June of this year, Hunter Biden went to trial and was found guilty on all 3 federal felonies. Hunter Biden was indicted by his father's Justice Department and convicted in court by a white jury. This is what Joe Biden is calling a politically motivated persecution of his innocent little boy who didn't do nothing wrong. You've heard the facts, the real ones, not the spin that the left corner of the white media has been trying to tell you. So tell me, where's the injustice? His fellow white folks heard his case and said that he was guilty, even if you want to claim that the prosecution was politically motivated, which would be a hell of a stretch considering that Biden is president and it was his own Attorney General Merrick Garland who called for the special counsel. My question is, was that white jury also politically motivated too? Were they some sort of political lynch mob? Were they in on it too? Now, for the sake of argument, if you want to claim that this is lawfare, just keep in mind, this is the exact same argument that Donald Trump has been making. So not only is Biden giving Trump all the cover and excuses that he needs to go ahead and do all the same stuff that's been happening to him, he's also made it where anyone who wants to object can't, because Biden's been taking the lead on all this stuff. I don't care for the orange man or Biden's drug-addicted creep of a child. I do care about the fact that Joe Biden was the one who wrote the '94 crime bill, or Biden's law as he called it, and that was the set of laws that established all of these draconian punishments that he's now trying to weasel his little son out of. As a result, he's made sure that his kid's never going to have to spend a day in prison, even though it was proven that he was guilty in court. Biden can't deny that he did it. He's claiming that, well, the punishments are extreme, this, that, and the third. He was the one who wrote the punishments. And if Biden's suddenly scared that his son would be harmed in prison, then it sounds like Biden should have made prison reform a priority during his administration. You've had people rotting in prison for crimes they didn't even commit. Hunter Biden would be going to prison for crimes he actually did. And you've had people mistreated in all kinds of ways, mostly black people, and Biden didn't give a 2-bit damn about any of them. In fact, back in the 90s, he reveled in it. He loved the fact that, these people are getting what they deserve. So spare me the phony bleeding heart routine for Biden and his little brat. He was the biggest cheerleader for harsh punishment, and he didn't care about the treatment of prisoners until there was the possibility that his son was going to become one of them. But make no mistake, the gun charges are only the tip of the iceberg. The overwhelming reason that Biden wanted to make sure that there was an all-encompassing pardon for his son was because of Burisma. This whole thing with Ukraine is actually blowing up in their faces literally. The war over there isn't going so well. Last thing that anybody needs is for somebody over there in Ukraine to start blabbing. And with Joe Biden leaving and Donald Trump coming in with a huge political mandate, it's not hard to see that the Orange Man's going to be on a revenge tour. And part of that tour is no doubt going to be going through Ukraine. Vladimir Zelensky has all sorts of problems already. The last thing he needs is Trump cutting him off. Last time, Trump merely delayed weapon shipments to Ukraine, demanding that the Ukrainians open some sort of investigation into Hunter Biden, even though the Ukrainians made it clear that they didn't really have anything to open an investigation with, not to mention they themselves didn't want to have to open up their own culpability. But even though Trump did relent on that demand, keep in mind, it was precisely his withholding of weapons to Ukraine and demanding some sort of investigation into Hunter Biden be announced by the Ukrainians that was the reason for his first impeachment. Trump hasn't forgotten about that, and I'm sure that he would love to have some way to be able to point and say, see, he was as dirty as I told you that he was. That's what's going through Trump's mind right now. And even if it's not, it's certainly what's going through Biden's mind. Trump is going to have a golden opportunity and plenty of motive to force the Ukrainians' backs to the wall and tell them that he can force them into a peace deal with Putin that will allow Putin to keep the 20% of their country that he's already conquered. And that being the case, the Ukrainians would have to basically live with that unless they were willing to tell all the dirty dealings about Hunter Biden, in which case he would see what he could do about getting Putin to back off a little bit. That's the kind of deal that I can easily see the Orange Man forcing the Ukrainians into. And especially when he makes it clear that he's not interested in sending them any more weapons. Keep in mind, Biden's been using every little presidential and executive order maneuver that he could to basically circumvent Congress as far as sending weapons to Ukraine goes. Trump has no such motivation to keep those weapons flowing. In fact, he has plenty of motivation to cut them off. And unless the Ukrainians can offer Trump something really juicy, what incentive does he have to keep the weapons coming in? That's the position that he's going to have, the upper hand. That's what's actually going on here. That's the part that Biden and his cheerleaders in the left corner of the white media don't dare talk about. The political and most of all, legal consequences that the Biden family is open to as a result of their dealings with Burisma. They don't want anyone opening that can of worms. But knowing Donald Trump, if anyone would dare, he would. Now, for the mushy-headed shills around here who are still desperately hoping for a Democrat consulting gig or to become a staffer for one of them, tell me this. Even if Hunter Biden was guaranteed to be sent to a proverbial country club federal facility to serve his 2 or so years in prison, do you seriously think that a racist, inveterate liar like Joe Biden would be saying anything different from what he's saying today? Sure, you can go ahead and claim, well, he's concerned about his son's safety. He's talking as if people are already beating the guy up now and he's not even in prison. So even if he was sent to the safest country club that you can imagine, do you really think that Biden would be saying anything different than what he's saying now? Of course not. In fact, even if Hunter didn't go to prison, even if prosecutors had merely let him off with a guilty plea, do you think Biden wouldn't have commuted the sentence regardless and claimed, well, Hunter's name shouldn't be tarnished because this is all just a politically motivated witch hunt. It wasn't even that serious. Why, they didn't even see fit to send him to prison. That's how unserious this is, etc., etc. Just a witch hunt. So no matter what Biden may try to claim, he would have wound up here regardless, no matter what. Anything other than the prosecutors dropping all charges would have resulted in him giving some sort of pardon or commutation of sentence to his son. That would have happened regardless. But the consequences for the Democrats are actually going to be extending far beyond this, because now nobody's going to be able to accuse the Orange Man of unfairly using his position to give his pals legal immunity, even when the Supreme Court inevitably decides to side with the guy who put half those justices on the bench. What's going to happen is they're going to say, hey, Joe Biden did it, we can do it too. And they'll be right. Even if I was so simple-minded as to go along with the narrative that Hunter Biden was being politically persecuted, that he was being unfairly targeted, this was all just a witch hunt, and that Joe Biden had every moral, rational right to pardon him, you still can't reconcile that with the fact that Joe Biden never gave the same consideration to anyone else. So this isn't about morality. It's Biden doing like every other politician inside the Beltway, using his position to make sure the criminal justice laws never touch him and his. That's one of the perks of the job, don't you know? And if you still want to insist that this was somehow morally justified, Well, truth be told, that doesn't matter even in political terms. In order to manufacture some sort of justification for this, you would have to come up with a nuanced argument. And the American people don't do nuance very well. Half of Americans simply aren't that sympathetic to Hunter Biden, and the other half of America hates the Bidens altogether. And miss me with these suck-ups who say Biden's already had to bury 2 of his sons. He simply can't bear to lose a 3rd child. He was looking at like 2 years in prison. That's all that Hunter Biden was reasonably looking at. They weren't going to put him on death row. And most importantly, Hunter Biden's been in trouble about drugs for decades now. His father wrote the laws that made it where he was subject to these punishments in the first place. If he wants to be mad at someone, he should be mad at himself. He was convicted by a jury of his peers, a white jury. This clown's been getting himself into run-ins with the law and kicked out of the Navy because he refuses to clean up his act. But then again, look at who his father is. And when I look at Hunter Biden, I see a lot of things, but the one thing I don't see is a victim. He's not a victim of anyone. No one is persecuting him. He's been a selfish brat who's relied on his racist father's political position to keep him out of trouble his entire life. And he has reveled in this legal immunity all these decades. And by the way, his being in the Navy wasn't because he enlisted and went through boot camp and everything. He became a naval reservist at the cutoff age in his 30s because his father got it for him. His father pulled some strings as usual and got Hunter Biden whatever he wanted. And yet he was still so disrespectful, so entitled that he threw that away, his little would-be vanity project, which was nothing more than a vanity project for him. Just a way for him to claim, I was in the Navy, you know, that's how they do it under white power. They just simply sit here and give these guys things that they didn't deserve and didn't earn, and that's okay, nobody will call them out on it because complexion for the protection. And now it's come time for the Biden family to have to live under the laws that Joe Biden himself wrote, and he tells the world that he wrote those laws to punish black people, not so that he would have to live under those laws himself. Millions of Americans have been in prison or have people they care about who are. And they've made the exact same pleas that Biden made about the treatment of their loved ones, and Biden's 94 crime bill was the main contributor to intensifying those terrible conditions and supercharging the prison industrial complex. All of these states, by the way, they signed on to Biden's law because, as Biden explained it, all you got to do is go ahead and use the federal government's power of the purse, or as they called it, the Truth in Sentencing Statute, wave $13 billion under the states' noses, which is what he did with the 94 crime bill, and those states will eagerly change their laws so that they can go ahead and get some of that sweet federal cash. And that's what happened. But of course, Simone Sanders lied through her teeth on CNN, claiming that, those were the states, that wasn't the federal government, until even Victor Blackwell had to tell her, look, we already know that's how Biden structured the 94 crime bill to incentivize the states to change their own state laws so that they could get that federal cash. And at that point, she was running away, well, the law's not perfect. Oh, we know the law ain't perfect. It was written by an inveterate racist. And you know what Biden previously said? He said if you can't do the time, don't do the crime. And that the system isn't perfect, but it's the only one we got. Well, actually, it's not, because there isn't one system, but actually 3. There's one system for black people, another for white people, and then a third one for white people with money and or the right connections. Well, one thing's for sure now. With this stunt, the whole country's finding out exactly what Biden's law actually is. Laws for thee, but not for me. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Bruce Day, Glenda Tice, Turk McKenzie, Anthony Pollard, and Jesse Good. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.